how working at FAANG makes your life harder. Personal little secret, I'm always hard. That's why I just never have a problem.
In this video, I want to talk about big company problems. For the most part, if you're a software engineer at a large tech company, your life is pretty good. You have really talented coworkers, you get paid really well, and you're going to be working with interesting technology. But there are problems unique to a large tech company that most software engineers are not familiar with. I started out my career as a founding engineer at a 3-person startup, and then worked my way to being a staff engineer.
It was almost there. I was just about to jump in so well with Erlich Bachman's startup name, but I cannot seem to remember it. I know it's not Haiku. Aviato. Yes, Aviato. That's what it is. Aviato. Every single time I see anyone mention their startup, I think of Jack Attack. Jack Attack going, Aviato. This is the best episode of all time. This is fantastic.
And manager at Meta, working there for almost 5 years. So there definitely was a pretty huge learning curve when I first got into the big tech environment.
Okay.
In this video, I'll share 4 of the unique challenges you'll encounter in big tech and a couple ways that you can adapt to this new environment. The first big company problem you'll encounter is dealing with an enormous code base. And the consequence of that is things like code search or opening up a file may not even work. And that took me weeks to figure out how to adapt my workflow for a new environment at Facebook, which had so much code that it wouldn't even fit locally. The background here is that most big tech companies will use something called a monorepo, which means that the code for a bunch of different projects is stored in the same code repository. Facebook, Google, Airbnb, Microsoft all use monorepos, and that means that the
Netflix not mentioned there. We don't do that. I am a little bit surprised by all the things he just said has not been my current experience at a FAANG company, at a manga company. We do have mini monorepos, correct? Hillbilly Netflix, I know, but why do you want all of your code in one repo? I don't understand that approach. To me, that doesn't make any sense. Like, I don't think there's any problem with the website having the website code. Easy search, source graph. Use source graph, dog. Right? Like, there's tools for searching intelligently over a series of repos. The way to do continuous delivery is the reason. They can't scale deployments at a company that have tens of thousands of engineers. Okay, fair. That's fair. It's to justify expensive company issued work laptops. Oh, okay. Anyways, maybe, yeah, I guess Netflix never got that big in the sense that I think we're only at a couple thousand engineers. But all of our stuff deploys independently. So there's not really, we have this thing called Kronos, which is like, every single thing that gets deployed gets a Kronos ping. Every single change to production gets a Kronos ping. And so whenever production starts suffering from someone's push, you effectively go to Galactus, and you ask it, when was at 4:15 we started going down. What just went wrong? And it's just like, oh, it's right here. These changes happened. So you go to those changes and you just track down who made those changes. Right, you find that, dude. I bet I do. You want to hear a crazy story? I changed a line of code, or I changed a fast property to start doing something, and at that exact moment, 1 minute later, Netflix caught on actual effing fire. It turns out somebody else used an automated job to launch a different property, and that automated job launching a different property had a bug in it, where it used the last person's name who manually adjusted it as the person who automatedly adjusted it. So I did that good hand job, gave it a good value, and then some robot job comes along, screws up everything, and bam, it is on fire. Things are terrible. I just happened to be the person testing their pipeline for them because it was like a new pipeline. And so I was like, hey, I have a project that could really use like some automation to it. Why don't we just test out to see if I can do these production changes super quick? And they're like, okay. And I mean, I had my boss calling my personal phone at like 5 p.m, like, yo, where are you? You need to get on right now. And I'm like, what the hell happened? What the hell is going on? Dude, I'm getting pings from all over. Multiple coworkers hit my personal phone. It was crazy. It was crazy.
Repository can be upwards of 50 gigabytes or more and tens of millions of lines of code. Having such a large code base means that your local development environment won't work the same way that you're used to if you're coming from a smaller company. Things like jumping to the definition, opening up a class, or finding usages of a method or function probably won't work. For example, at Facebook, there were literally hundreds of different Android projects contained in the monorepo. And so because that would be way too big to fit into Android Studio, like the IDE, Android Studio wouldn't be able to index all the different projects. The strategy was you would selectively load in modules. So if you're working on one particular part.
Is this true, Lithium? Lithium, you're here. Are you telling me that the LSPs couldn't handle 50 projects? I mean, I don't know anything about VS Code. I don't use loser software. I use NeoVim, by the way. I use NeoVim because I'm obviously Chad level here, Chad level misogynist here, and so I don't suffer with slow problems. It's not like a thing I think about. It's just I don't even know what that means. Explain module like I'm 5. Yeah, I know when they say selectively load modules, I genuinely don't know what that means. Like, I know what modules are. Let's see, hold on. They use VS Code that works on a remote VM. It uses a sapling file system for monorepo. They claim that LSPs couldn't work. Imagine... Imagine being forced to use VS Code and LSPs don't even work. Oh my goodness. That everything just made me laugh really hard there. Okay.
Part of the Facebook or Instagram app, you would load in those modules, make your changes, and then put it out for code review. And
Today I'm a little passive aggressive. No, I'm active aggressive. I'm pretty sure there was nothing passive about me being aggressive towards VS Code just then. I don't think there was a single step at all at any point in which I passively suggested that it wasn't good. I actively suggested it with all activity and girthiness.
so
Again, it's just me. I love Vim, okay? Everybody gets to love their tool and shit on their other tools that do the same thing, okay? That's just how it works. I like the way I cook macaroni and cheese. I think the way you cook macaroni and cheese is bullshit, okay? So don't come at me with your stuff, okay?
what would frequently happen, especially when I first joined, is I'd make a change, I would add a parameter to a method, and it turned out that method was being used in a bunch of different modules, which I didn't have loaded locally. And it would then break the build. And so what you really have to get used to working at a big tech company is using an online tool, which you could trust the results of that a lot more to be able to find variable or a method was being used. And you also had to be way more familiar with the CI.
If you have an online tool and LSPs exist remotely, that's all LSPs exist remotely. Dude, just effing build an LSP. It's not even that hard. Just literally build the LSP, make the remote call to validate something, and then just do it. What is this? What are they talking about? When I say just do it, it's base fook. They have $1 billion. Not true. I want to build an LSP locally in Wasm. Okay, well, if you already have all that, then build the effing thing locally. Why even build it in Wasm? Just build that shit in Rust. Call it a day. Rust has a free LSP kit. It has every last thing you ever need. Run that. This is the same company that decided to build a PHP compiler instead of adopting another language. Checkmate, atheist. Oh, yeah, it's super simple. So, it's just LSP server. It's for free. It's what Rust Analyzer uses. I love. Oh my goodness, yes. Let's go. Let's go. Look at this. It just tried to hot dog me again. It just tried to hot dog me. GitHub tried to just show, like, my phone number is directly one line lower, and GitHub did that again. But luckily, look at this. It missed it. It missed me. Can't catch me with that. Can't catch me with that one. There you go. Look at that. There you go. It's just literally LSP server. It also comes with another module called LSP types. You can just build an LSP for anything. I built one for HTMX. It actually works.
System, the continuous integration system, because that would really be the test of whether your code compiled correctly and didn't break anything else. The second challenge of working within a big tech company is that you will often be working with abstractions that are unique to that company. And that means that you really adept at being able to look at internal discussions and forums and talking to the right people in order to get the help you need. Big tech companies are dealing with problems at a scale that very, very few other companies have to deal with. Either in terms of the number of users they serve, the number of developers at the company who are checking code.
Active picture of how developers develop. Right? Okay, you can tell right away that this guy right here is definitely a developer and not an actor, because you can see that he's chicken necking hard, right? His ears are almost to his elbows, okay? So you can really tell right away that this guy is truly a developer, like just really leaning forward on that code. Clearly product manager, no one wears a two-piece. I'm not sure what this even is going on here. What the hell's happening over here? Nobody knows what's happening. This is strange. Very strange situation going on here.
inventing new technologies that are going to be.
By the way, this is very true, though. This statement that he's saying is extremely true. If you want to work at a larger company, there is no off-the-shelf solutions. Like, everything is in-house. Every last thing is in-house. How we do our canaries, completely hand-rolled. How we measure if our canaries are good, completely hand-rolled. How we do real-time metrics, completely hand-rolled. Like, everything, every last little bit is all hand-rolled. What are canaries? Well, because it's the scale. Right? You can't use a service, be like, hey, by the way, service, do you think that we could do a little quick canary? Let's put 1 trillion requests over the next couple days in this canary, and then let's put 1 trillion over here. Dude, it would literally cost $1 billion to run a canary with these companies. You just have to roll your own everything. Everything from the ground up has to be ran. And that's just the way it is, you know?
Used in future products. Novel problems lead to novel solutions. And that innovation, that creativity is what attracts a lot of the best people in tech to go work at a large tech company.
All right, what's a canary? Everyone keeps asking what a canary is. Comes after the old story of canary in a coal mine. You put a canary in the coal mine, and when it dies from horrible gases, that beautiful, lovely little canary, because they're super sensitive, it dies from horrible gases. You know that you need to get out of the coal mine because the canary died. So it's called a canary. What you effectively do is you have your standard in production version, and then you have your canary that you release of it. Maybe it only gets 1% of the traffic. Then you have a series of key metrics that you measure your canary against production. And if there's any deviation in those metrics, either you just don't have a large enough sample size, which happens all the time, or B, you've actually made a change in which you cannot go forward with, and you need to roll back to the previous production version. Right? It's just because, like, at some point testing doesn't work, and production is the only true validation of your code. Right? Like, at some point you can't say it's going to work. Right? There's just
and developing new tools and frameworks and even new programming languages can be really exciting, but also really challenging. So if you compare that to working in a smaller company where you're using off-the-shelf technology, you typically will encounter a problem, Google for it, find a relevant Stack Overflow post, and then use that to fit your situation. In a large company, it's not that simple. You might be one of the first teams.
Your definition was way better. Okay, what was your definition, Judo? It's a bird you kill to avoid your server going down. Okay, that's a pretty good one.
To be using some cutting-edge, brand new API or storage system. And so when you do encounter a problem, you can't just find the answer on Google. You have to go digging through the internal forums, find the right people in order to get the help you need. I like to think about it as having one more path to go down if you work at a big tech company. So for example, at a small company, if you're using some stable tool or API like React or
See, we really got to work on your posture, buddy. Okay, we got to work on your posture. Okay, I'm confident you got this, but this is like not going to be good for you long term. We really got to think about this in a long-term situation. So I'd immediately, like, you'll notice one thing right away, that his head is way too high on his monitor, okay? You're definitely going to want to change things up. You're going to want to raise that monitor up a little bit. You're definitely going to want to change some things. You're definitely going to want to roll back your shoulders, okay? Roll them back. Then you want to you want your head to be over your shoulders. You know what I mean?
Android, then any problem you encounter is almost certainly going to be with either your code or your approach. The underlying technology is going to be sound. But at a big tech company, if you're one of the first people to integrate with the new technology, it could be that your code is wrong, it could be that your approach is wrong, or it could very well be that the underlying technology doesn't support your use case yet,
or they accidentally say that you're the reason why production went down, and you're getting phone calls from your boss in the middle of the day, in the middle of the evening.
There's a bug there. And you have to be able to have enough knowledge and context to dive into that and then give feedback to the people and work together to find an appropriate solution. And so what you find is that the best engineers have that much deeper level of collaboration. They're able to describe very clearly what are their goals, what are the goals of the infrastructure, and then what are the gaps, and how do you bridge that gap to now work together with other teams to find a solution that not only works for you, but also for other teams or other organizations within this huge company. The third challenge, which is unique to working in big tech, is that there are so many changes occurring at any given time. So it's really hard to get a holistic view of what is happening with your feature or your product. For example, at any given day at a company like Airbnb or Meta, you might have an experiment rollout happening. You might have a configuration change, like a kill switch, which is going from 0 to 100 to release something. You could have code changes being deployed. You might have a mobile release going out. Typically that happens every week or two. Or you might have a feature which is being rolled out only to employees or only to users in a particular geography, like only in the US or only in Canada. This adds a lot of complexity to debugging issues. So for example,
absolutely. We have a whole slew of things that we look for. We flag various A/B tests that are going out. I mean, it's extremely difficult to know why a user is failing. I've had some of the worst failings of all time. Some of the failings I actually got figured out was by logging an error, the state of the client who were on a specific television, when I discovered that when the television went from suspended into half suspended mode, meaning that it's just starting to come to life, it comes to life, but tells you that you have networking, you have CPU, you have memory, you have screen. The screen's rendering, and that's not true. Your screen's not rendering. So I never did anything that was special. I could never load like new JavaScript or do anything because I'm like, oh, it's in front of the user right now. Netflix is in the foreground, but it was actually not even in the foreground. And that took so long to figure out just because of some stupid series of configuration changes. It was emotionally painful. It was emotionally damaging to figure out these things, and you have to go through such hoops in figuring out who was in what tests and all that. It's just the worst. The thing was that there's flags on that weren't supposed to be on. That's the problem.
Example, at a small company, what you probably would do is you would grab the 2 or 3 people relevant to the bug or the feature, and then you would think about, okay, what changed? And then you have all the knowledge right there in
that person executed an ls command. That's pretty sweet.
that room, and you can figure out what to revert or what to fix forward in order to address the situation. Within a larger company, though, it's much harder to root cause the issue because you could have a change made by a completely unrelated team, which somehow turns out to impact you. My recommendation for new engineers in big tech is to be really familiar with the tooling to answer questions around all of the different possible changes that could be occurring. In fact, what I'd recommend is that you and your team generate a run book, basically a playbook of what questions you should ask every time something
we do this all the time.
Like in my example, the common questions I would ask anytime there was any bug report that was given to me. Number one, does this issue only happen on one platform or all platforms? Is it unique to Android, iOS, or web, or does it happen everywhere? Number two, does the issue happen for everyone or just some subset of users? So for example, it might be only happening for employees, or maybe it's only happening for users without a profile picture, or like what is the condition which triggers this bug?
These are great.
Number three, is it 100% reproducible or not? And number four, what configuration changes happened around the time when this issue was introduced? And so just being able to have that.
Those are great. Those are great things. It's very, very true. We had a bug once that a specific row on television would only show up after 7 p.m. at night and stop showing at 4 a.m. You know how many people I had to have in a room to figure out why that was happening? It was single-handedly one of the worst experiences of my life. It was. They also referred to it as Netflix's most expensive row ever created. It was my row, okay? I was very excited about it. Very, very excited about it. And it just took forever to figure out. We had one time we had 2 directors, a manager, and 17 individual engineers in a room, all trying to, because it was just like, all right, it's come to Jesus time. Who done it? And where did it go? No one was taking responsibility. Everyone did. So we just got every last team into a room and just said, someone will start debugging. Who's starting it? Right? And we eventually figured it out. It was very stupid. US East versus US West won. US East had a special set of permissions that would kick on that my traffic would get routed at certain high traffic times, versus US West one would have a different set of permission groups for certain servers to talk to. And then, boom, it wouldn't work out. And it was emotional. It was painful. It took a long time to figure out.
That go-to list of questions will make you way more efficient at finding out the root cause. The fourth and final challenge of working within big tech is that you will have a lot of stakeholders that you have to keep up to date and get their approval in order to ship anything meaningful. In a large tech company, there are, unsurprisingly, a large number of people, right? And so those large number of people will impact your life in a couple different ways. And I bucket those people into 3 categories. Number one are other engineers. These are people that you have to convince, the tech lead and engineers on your team, why the work you're doing is important. And you also, at a very basic level, have to get your code approved, right? The engineers on the team have to look at your code and approve it in order to make a commit and ship it. So you have to work with them pretty closely. The second category of people are all the people you have to keep up to date and informed. So your manager, your product manager, the designer, other people on the team or partner teams that have to be aware of your work because they're relying on it or they contributed to your work in some way. And finally, the third category is the leadership team. So this is the director or VP of engineering or product who will actually approve your launch. And so you have to be able to work with them and convince them that the work that you're doing is net positive for the company and it's a meaningful thing to ship. And once they approve it, then you can actually sell.
So this is one nice part about Netflix that is a lot different, is that it's sort of inverted. It's more like there's a problem that needs to be solved. Like game streaming is our recent one, right? And so game streaming, go solve game streaming. I offered a solution for part of the problem. So I just showed my boss my tool that I worked on for a few days instead of doing the work he wanted me to do. He said, all right, that's your new tool. That's the new thing you're working on. Go work on that. And I just went and worked on it. I didn't really have to sell. You don't have to do nearly as much selling, nearly as much technical artifacts. You just need to start building and show people why it's nice. And then you just start start tossing it out in out in prod, if you will, and people go, okay, I love that. So there's a lot more GSD culture in general in Netflix as opposed to these other, like Google, heavily documented. I'm not saying that it's not, like, documenting is not important at Netflix. It's just not the same level of stuff, right? Selling to other engineers and keeping people informed, this will always exist. GSD, get shit done. So this always exists, no matter what. Even if you're on a tiny, even at a startup, this still exists, right? You still have to keep other engineers informed and the people who are working, like, adjacent, right? If you're working with a sales team, you still have to keep them informed on where your progress is and all that. So, like, these two exist no matter where you're at. I'd even really say that even the leadership team, this has always existed. I really have never been in a situation where all three don't exist everywhere. And yeah, actually, now that I think about it, you really do have to do this pretty much everywhere. Netflix is the first place where the leadership team feels more abstracted in some sense. It feels different, right? Like, I don't remember the last time I talked to a VP. I just kind of do my own thing and build the things I think are really important. And then I just get my boss to go, yeah, that's a good idea. Or my boss to go, no, that's not a good idea.
Celebrate the win. This is very different
most
if you work
places
at
at Netflix,
where instead of 3 different buckets of people, you literally only have, the whole company might only be a handful of people. And so many startups that are that early, they will not even have a notion of code review. Like an engineer.
Yeah, we always have top-down mandates. So ads, game streaming. So we did a social one. We did a social experiment 9 years ago. Like, all those are all top-down kind of mandates. Like, figure out X, right? And then we go and do X. So it's a little bit different.
Makes a decision to write a feature, they ship it, and it goes out the same day or the next day. And so the code velocity, the ability to ship things, is way faster because you don't have all this gatekeepers or this process in order to get approvals. At a larger company, the cost of screwing up a launch or a feature can actually be quite high. And that's why there are safeguards in place in terms of your engineering team, the cross-functional team around you, and the leadership team to make sure that the things that do get shipped are high quality and everyone is pointed in the same direction.
So what do I do if I disagree with the direction? I try to convince them. Right? Sometimes you just lose a battle, right? You have to be willing to lose your battle, but you have to also be willing to fight. And that's just how, it's no different in a small company than a big company. It's just that there's more layers of abstraction you have to convince in a larger company. Luckily, again, Netflix runs very lean, and so it just seems like there's less levels of abstraction. Really, I just have to get my boss to buy in, and then my boss may have to get 1 or 2 other people to buy in, and that's it, right? It's just a negotiating thing. It's really just a proving your value kind of thing. And so when I disagree with leadership, I try to show them something different. And we've done that, and sometimes we've done it where we showed them really good value, and they said no, despite it being really, really amazing value. It was a no. Sometimes I show them good value, and they just say yes, we'll do it. And it's a give and take.
So if you are a new engineer to a big company, you have to get used to
I just am not willing to die on hills. You know what I mean?
And collaboration with everyone on your team. These are the 4 biggest challenges I encountered as I transitioned from a startup engineer to a big tech company engineer. And I think so many engineers are not even aware of the gap in skill set that's needed when you go into a medium or large tech company. And even once they're aware, they are not sure how to address the gap. And that's actually the whole point of the company I'm building, Taro. Join Taro.com. I'll leave a link in the description. And the idea is that you have really high quality, high credibility discussion with
the man's running his own ads, okay?
Already work
hey, hashtag ad, let's
definitely
go.
would encourage you to check out the platform in order to advance your career a lot faster. And if you do work at a big tech company which has a learning budget, then there's a really good chance that you can actually expense the cost of Taro Premium entirely to your company. So if you work at a company like Microsoft, Uber, Amazon, Meta, you can get Taro entirely for free. Check it out, and I would love your feedback. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.
Well done. Great. This was a great video, and I think he was a spot on a lot of what he had to say. I think one thing that was just hard for me to understand is that when you go from a startup, everything you do is really abstracted to various services or something that's very simple, right? If you go to a startup that's, say, getting 100,000 users per month, you might just literally have a singular database. You might just, like, that's what it was when I was younger. I've been at Netflix for 10 years, so things have obviously changed. But most people just had, like, a singular database. They had a singular 2 machines that's node balanced between 2 machines. It's like, you're configuring a machine. You're not just auto-scaling and crushing the whole world. It's smaller. It's monoliths. It's all built in one little thing, and it's just a different experience. And when you go to one of these large companies, it's like everything is the complete inversion. there's like, to find the machine your thing's going for, you have to wait until the thing's launched. You're like, okay, that's my machine. I got to go to that machine specifically. It's just like a completely different experience if you wish to do that. It's hard to get access to a lot of things. There's a lot of trust you have to hurdle through. That's just way, way different. I don't know. It's a fun experience, but it's most certainly way, way different. And for me, that was the hardest one, which was, I remember to this day, launching my PlayStation 3, launching Netflix on it with my own custom application, and coming to the realization that's what's happening is that the database URL being generated actually is being served uniquely. So every single UI build had a unique backend URL associated with it. Then I went and figured out what is that unique backend URL associated with, and I went to the database or the SDK team or the API team, as we called them, and I said, API team, what is going on here? They explained that they took your Java program that you were writing, compiled it into bytecode, stored your backend. This is at this time. It's long changed since then. But store that in a Cassandra database, and when a call was being made, it actually load that specific backend code and run it, so that each UI had its very own specific backend that's perfectly tailored to that exact moment when it was released. And so, it's changed a lot since then, but still, like, that was a very different experience from what I was used to. Sounds like Hermes before Hermes. Yeah, it was somewhat like it. So caching, yeah, they'd cache the Javas, the Javas. But that's a big difference, right? When you're used to the backend, the one that's deployed, right? You have your test one, then you have the production one, to have like this whole generation get stuff. You don't even know what's going on. You don't even know where the API code's generated. When things don't work, why doesn't it work? Someone told me that the backend was multi-threaded and that RxJS or RxJava at that point, which we had our own custom version called the double UX, was actually multi-threaded. I put a sleep 5 in there and took down every single environment on accident except for production, because it wasn't multi-threaded. It was single-threaded. Nobody told me that. So when I put a sleep in there, nobody woke me up. I just slept forever, crashed all of them. You know what I mean? It's just like, what the hell is this? You told me it was multi-threaded, but it's not, right? Like, you don't even know the world. You can't know the world, right? It's just gigantic. You know what I mean? It's just different with that stuff. It's scary the moment that no one can understand the system anymore. Exactly. You can't understand the system anymore. At Netflix, no one person understands any system. Like, even the UI is largely understood by very few people. Just the television UI, you can only understand part of it, because really it's broken down into like 3-4 major pieces, right? You have like the UI side of things. You have like the JavaScript caching, requesting side of things. Then you have like the authentication, interaction with the device side of things. And then you have the adaptive streaming side of thing. And each one of those is a team of 20s, 30s, 40s, 50 people. And so it's like, you can't understand that world. It's just like a world in which is unable to be understood easily. And so, and I didn't even mention the TVUI platform. It's very, very hard to make an application that large. Tom could do it. Well, Tom's a genius. You're not a genius. I'm sorry. You're not a Tom-level genius. Can this be avoided? At some point, it can't be avoided, because there's just so much more inside of making an application as it gets larger. Now, some decisions I think could be made more simple, of course. I think everybody thinks they can make a system more simple, but at the end of the day, if you were to rebuild a system, what you would realize is you just rebuilt the same system that's equally confusing with a different set of requirements. That's all it ends up being. The WhatsApp team did it right. There is bloat in big tech. I think, well, the WhatsApp team did it right because they had such a small product. I think you can remain pretty tight on a small product. That's it. Yeah, it's just clearer to you. Yeah, it's not clearer to everybody. It's just clearer to you. And that's the hard part, is that there is no easy win here. And so whenever someone says that, oh, people are doing it wrong, whatever, in large companies, it's just like, dude, stuff is so hard. It's so much harder than what anyone makes it. Whenever someone says, I could do it better, you're just like, I don't think you know the first thing about working in a really large company and exactly how many people go into making something, right? Big stuff is hard. Big stuff is hard. One could argue that it's unintuitive to try to put together mass advertisement with genuine social interaction and communication. I'm not even sure what that means, but maybe not. I don't know. Are you talking about like Twitter or something? I mean, Twitter would be really hard to make. I don't think I'm not foolish enough to think I could somehow make it into a streamlined, super easy thing instantaneously. I think that it's probably really difficult. There's a lot of stuff to it. Scaling gets super hard. Your launches become completely bespoke. Everything about your life becomes bespoke. It's difficult. It's just simply difficult. Anyways, the name is the Primeagen. I work at Netflix, by the way. Like and subscribe. Oh my goodness, I remembered. Let's go.